So hi, I'm Tanya Mitchell. I'd just like to introduce myself. I'm the Vice President of Research and Development for LearningRx, and Cheryl Sparber is also with us. She is the Center Director. And then we have Lindsay Yoakum. She will be available for people that have questions. We'll have a Q&A time at the end of this webinar. But anytime during the webinar, if you have a question, just go ahead and send it right to Lindsay through chat. And then at the end of the webinar, I'll answer all your questions. So I just want to thank you for joining us. This is probably about a 30-minute webinar, and then we'll be done. So like I said, I'm head of research and development for LearningRx. We actually have 90 locations around the country, and we have 40 centers in 25 countries. We've been here in Colorado Springs. Our world headquarters is actually off of Centennial by Garden of the Gods, but our north center is off of Woodman and I-25. So along with having our center here, and this is a local webinar for just people in Colorado Springs, we also work with and train professionals and franchisees all around the country. So hopefully, no matter what question you have, we'll be able to answer it. I just wanted to show you a quick picture of my family. That's me with my husband. He actually works at Northcom over at Peterson Air Force Base, and these are our 3 kids. We're out in Monument, so my kids attend Lewis Palmer. And my kids actually went through the program last year. So for the first time, I was a customer of LearningRx, and I had 3 of my kids go through. All 3 have different types of struggles, if you want to call them that, in school. So I might be able to help through their story just a little bit and talk about the changes that I've seen with them, even in doing homework. So let's start with the big question, and that is the struggling student. And let me just open up the idea that a struggling student may get bad grades or they may not get bad grades. And I don't know if any of you have kids where their grades are okay, but they just struggle so much to get those grades. Maybe they have to work longer or harder, or they make more mistakes than other kids. And so schoolwork could be a stressful time for them. And one of the things that we like to sort of debunk is that if someone is getting straight A's, does that really equal smart? Do straight A's equal smart? And, one of the students I worked with years ago, she came to us, and she was actually valedictorian of her class. She was getting a 4.0. So, if I have 4 kids, one of my kids is getting a 4.0, you may not think of that person as a struggling student. But when she took her ACTs, she actually scored in the 53rd percentile, which meant for her that she wasn't able to go to the school that she wanted to, the college that she wanted to. And obviously she wasn't going to qualify for any academic scholarships, even though she had all the other pieces in place. And what was interesting is when we tested her, you could see that she was in many ways an overachiever. So she struggled. She had some cognitive weaknesses that held her back. She had to work twice as hard as everyone else to get those A's. So, when we think about success for our kids or success in school, is it how much you know, or is it how intelligent you are? Is it, what makes a child successful in school? And what I would say is it's probably a little bit of both, right? And so when we think of the struggling student, we or even just a student, we can think about 2 parts of learning. There's the knowledge part, and that's what our great teachers try to teach our kids every single day, facts and concepts and, thinking skills within school and learning. And then there's intelligence. And that means that when the teacher is trying to teach our child how to remember something or how to learn something or a fact, how well do they process that information? How well do they retain that information? And that would be their intelligence. So there's really two parts to learning. If we wanted to go a little bit deeper, knowledge would be, again, those accumulated facts, sort of their database, even their world experience. We liken it to a file cabinet, just all the information they know. And knowledge is measured largely by achievement tests and then, of course, that grade that we get 3 to 4 times a year. Intelligence, on the other hand, again, is how well they process that information. It would also include higher thinking skills or critical thinking skills, and we would measure that through IQ testing. And then you may see those results on SAT, ACT tests or other college entrance tests. And so as I refer to intelligence, I may also say something like cognitive skills, processing skills, learning tools, mental skills. All of those are dealing with the same thing, sort of what the skills that make up someone's intelligence or their processing ability, how well they process information. So we go to our student and we consider, sort of the teacher's view. So we're looking in a classroom and we've got our 25 kids there, and we put out a task. Maybe it's a math task or a history task or a science task. And then we walk to our desk and we let them do this self-work. Why is it that after 15 minutes, some kids are finished, they're completed, they've done well with their assignment, and other kids within that same classroom struggle after an hour? Why is that? And what we would say is that they come with different tools. They come with different tools. So if we would look into what intelligence was or what those thinking skills or processing skills are, we could use this model of learning. And this is probably, we have some graphics behind it, but this is probably the most used model of learning in the world. And most of the IQ tests that we have, so the Woodcock-Johnson or the WISC, which is also called the Wechsler, those would be off of this model of learning or model of intelligence. So we're going to look at some of these different skills and how deficiencies or weaknesses within these skills affect learning and affect schoolroom or schoolwork. All these skills, some of these skills are more important with different subjects, and some are underlying to all subjects. For instance, attention obviously would be underlying to all subjects. Let me just pull up a little arrow here. If a child can't attend, it really doesn't matter what you give them. If they have a 12-second attention span, they're probably going to do poorly in all subjects because it's underlying to really everything. But let's go ahead and look at some of those things that come home. As a mom of a 9-year-old, he's turning 9 Wednesday, I dealt with all of the issues that I'm bringing you last night. So, it's fresh knowledge to me. But let's consider math computations. Why, and if you guys have, several kids, you probably deal with it. Why is it that one child does math computations so much better than another child? Well, to some degree, math computations are built on some reasoning skills, right? You have to understand what math is, what adding is, what, multiplication is. And then after that, it's largely a memory skill that helps people do their math computations. So when I say 9 times 4, maybe we have to think just a little bit, but I would think that none of us are adding 9 plus 9 plus 9 plus 9. We know because we have been drilled or we went through memory exercises that 9 times 4 is 36. Is that right? 9 times 4 is 36? Okay, just in case. And so, when you think of that, if I throw out another thing, what's 9 times 3? And when you think of what you're doing to create that answer, a lot of us are probably visualizing it. So I actually visualize it in my head. I'll see a 9 times 3 equals 27 in my head. And then depending upon the computation, you know, if they have a speed quiz, processing speed could be a big issue in how well they do with math computations. Because if you do more than one computation, in other words, if I said, what's 5 times 4 minus 5? Now I've added a processing speed piece to it as well as working memory. So along with having to deal with the first part of the math problem, I also have to retain the second part and deal with it after the first part. So all these skills are critical. So if you have a child that struggles with math and math computations, they may have some deficiencies in this area, in these different areas, that make it difficult for them to do that. I just have a little exercise here. This is actually something we use within our training, just to show you what it might feel like. And just for everyone, what I thought I would do is I will go ahead and go back and forth, and you guys can follow along a little bit. But try to do the exercise to see what it feels like, just with computations. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a working memory procedure that might help strengthen a working memory skill and make things easier, but we'll use math computations as part of it. And that is, we're going to add 2 to this row here, or this column, and then we're going to add 1 to this column, and we're going to go back and forth. So we would say something like 6, 3, 4, 2, 7, 1, 8, 4, 9, 9, 3, 10. And, the skill that makes that easier for me is that working memory skill. So, but that might just give you a little insight into what working memory is and how it could be used within school. Okay, so another area that comes up a lot would be that math word problem, which in many ways is different than a math computation. Where a math computation is a fact, a math word problem requires more thinking, right? So sometimes our kids are good at adding, but you give them a word problem and they're lost. And what I would say is that someone who is good with math word problems would have strong working memory skills and long-term memory skills, as well as be able to visualize sort of the problem in their head. They also need good reasoning skills and planning skills. And then just for the reading portion, they need a skill called auditory processing, and that may not make a lot of sense now, but I'll get to that in just a minute. So if we were able to, I think I lost my math word problem here. But if we were able to talk about a word problem, let's say I say Susie has 5 chickens. Her friend gave her 2 chickens, and each chicken gives 1 egg a day. How many eggs does Susie get a day? So first you would have to say, okay, so Susie has 5 plus 2 chickens, so she has 7 chickens. And then those 7 chickens each gave an egg that day, so then she gets 7 eggs a day. That's a pretty complex task if you think about what you're doing in your head, especially for our kids, right? And it requires all of these skills. If one of these skills are missing, if the working memory skill is missing or deficient, they're going to drop the third piece. They might only answer the first part of the question. If they can't reason or turn that into a mathematical problem, then they're not going to have the answer. If they can't read, if they don't have this auditory processing skill, they can't even do the problem. Let's look at another issue that a struggling student might have, and that is academic instruction. So, as a mom, I send my kids off to school, and I really have no clue how they do in school. I know how they are at home. I know how they are in my environment at home. But how do they do in school? How long are they able to attend to the instruction given? And even if the teacher is fun and exciting, if they have an attention issue, what are they really getting in instruction when they go to school? At the same time, if a teacher is instructing a child and it's almost like a sequential process, so they say, you start with A, and once you do A, then you do B. Once you do B, then you do C. If you don't connect those, if you have a slow processing speed, you may never connect those together because you're processing a lot slower than the teacher is instructing. So it's hard to get that information in. We've already dealt a little bit with working memory, but, if I'm talking about the Great Pyramids and that they're in Egypt, but I can't sort of connect those together, or, I can't remember what the pyramids look like or what a pyramid is, then that's going to be a real difficulty with me understanding what the pharaohs had to do with pyramids. Same with long-term memory. I think, a lot of times parents understand sort of the memory piece. We get memory, but these other areas are a little bit more difficult. Visual processing, just being able to picture what the teacher is talking about. So those that learn better, if you're giving me auditory instruction and I can't visualize what the teacher is saying, then I'm not going to understand it as well. Reasoning skills. Being able to problem solve or think. You could see how if I'm given a science question, or let's say I have to do a science lab, and I just have a hard time taking information from 1 and 2 and turning it into C, with some reasoning skills, then some of those, science and math are going to be very difficult for me. And then just auditory processing, if I process my information slower because it's harder for me to analyze what the teacher's saying, that's going to affect the outcome of what I can take in. So that could be an issue. Now, if we look at one of these skills, attention, and we know that this is an underlying skill to everything, we can sort of look at some different types of attention that a student could struggle with. And most of us, when we think of attention, we probably think about sustained attention, being able to stay on task for a period of time, the period of time necessary to do well. And if I were going to demonstrate sustained attention, what I could do is just have someone read the words on this color word chart. So, and you guys can follow along with me. I would do this because the next types of attention I talk about sort of lead into what I'm doing right now. So if you all want to follow along with me and just say these out loud. Black, red, green, yellow, blue, blue, green, yellow, black, black, red, black, red, black, green, red, green, yellow, blue, black, black. And to just be able to do a task for a period of time. I remember one of the first students I worked with almost 20 years ago. He could only do things for about 12 seconds. And I know that because I timed him. So every 12 seconds he was fidgeting or touching things on the table, asking me questions, having to go to the bathroom. And then when you would give him a task, we use a metronome in our training, and he'd always stumble after the second line of a task like this. By the end of 3 months of training, he actually could stay on task for 20 minutes. But he had a real attention issue when he came in. There's another type of attention that probably is a little bit more important for our kids in a classroom setting, or if you have multiple kids at home trying to do homework all together, and that is a skill called selective attention. That's where you have 2 inputs coming in. You have to ignore one and concentrate on the other. To sort of demonstrate what that would feel like, we're going to do the same task, but this time, instead of saying the word, we're going to say the color of the word. So instead of saying the word, we're going to say the color of the word. Are you guys all ready? Okay, here we go. Red, black, blue, yellow, green, blue, yellow, black, green, red, green, blue, red, red, black, yellow, black, yellow, blue, red, black. How did we all do? Good, good. So that was that's called selective attention. Someone who's strong in that skill is able to ignore other inputs and just concentrate on one. You think about in a classroom, you're sitting next to a bunch of kids, and when the teacher's instructing you or when you have schoolwork in front of you, you're supposed to ignore everything around you and concentrate. And if you can't do that, or if that's difficult for you, everything becomes difficult. Well, the beauty is that is a trained skill as well, and you can train that skill. In our centers, one of the things we do is when they're doing activities, we will add distractions in. So they have to stay focused on the exercise that they're doing, and we try to get them off task, and they start building this ability to stay on task. At home, I'll use a stopwatch, and you almost make it a game. But a lot of times I don't have control over all the inputs at home to train that skill. But it is a trained skill. And then you think about sports playing and some of the other activities that our kids do. If they're able to focus, even playing football or dance or gymnastics or basketball, if they're able to focus and concentrate on what they're supposed to, it can be a life-changing experience for kids. Okay, so the last skill, and probably the most important skill within attention, is a skill called divided attention. And it's a little bit like working memory, but these are the people that can multitask pretty well. So if one of the issues that you have with your struggling student is that they really need everything simplified, they can only concentrate on one thing at a time, then they probably have difficulty with this skill called divided attention. And to sort of give you an example of that skill, what we're going to do is now we're going to go color, word, color, word, color, word, color, word. So we'll say the color of the first word, which would be red, and then we'll say the word, which would be red, of the next word. Are you guys all ready? Yeah. Okay, good. Now, it's been a while. Hopefully I have my divided attention skills. So I'm past the mental peak of cognition. Once you pass 33, you're supposed to be going downhill. So I guess that's a little warning. Here we go. Color, word, color, word. So it's red, red, blue, yellow, green, blue, yellow, yellow, green, black, red, black, black, red, black, yellow, blue, black, black. Last one you just get. So, by the way, if any of you stayed with me on that whole thing, we are having interviews tonight for brain trainers. You have to have a college degree, and all of our trainers have very strong cognitive skills. That's how we hire people, based on how strong their skills are. So if you were super quick at that, we really are having interviews tonight, and that's just open. Okay. Let's look at another task. I would say probably about 70% of the students that we see at our center here in Colorado Springs have a reading difficulty or a comprehension difficulty. And so let me give you some insight into why people fail to read. And our government spent about $200 million in 10 years studying this question. Why do people fail to read? And if you think about reading, it is a very complex task. So obviously you have to attend, right? You have to have good processing speed. You have to have good working memory, because you're reading, especially for comprehension, but you're having to remember the code and what you're going to say and what the word was, long-term memory. The ability of visual processing, understanding that when you see a stick with a ball on the right side of the stick, that you say "buh." Reasoning skills, as far as probably comprehension. But the number one skill, hands down, when someone has difficulty in a sound-based language, is a skill called auditory processing. And within it, it's a skill that allows someone to analyze and manipulate sounds in a syllable. So, a lot of times if kids had ear infections, lots of ear infections when they were a kid, or they didn't speak right away, or they had some speech issues, or maybe just genetics. There's lots of reasons why people have auditory processing deficiencies, but if they do have that deficiency, it's very likely that reading is going to be more difficult for them in school. And if you have kids right now that guess at words, even in first or second grade, they guess at words or try to guess at the ending, they may have this difficulty. And it really affects their reading later on. In fact, in the study, in that big study that I was talking about, they found that 88% of those that had reading difficulties had a deficiency in phonemic awareness, and that is not phonetic awareness. So phonics would be understanding that when you see that stick in the ball, that you say "b." But phonemics would be if I say a word like flumber. How would you say flumber without the sound? It'd be flubber. And someone who has a strong skill in that would be able to do that very quickly. And someone who does not have a strong skill in that may have to put too much thinking into it, and then they've lost what they're reading. And so, again, they found 88% in our own study, and this is on 3rd to 5th grade students. 97% of those that had reading difficulties, or where a parent came in and checked mark reading as a chief concern, 97% were weak in phonemic awareness skills. The great news is this is a very changeable and trainable skill. And in our own studies, you can see here, this is also a skill you either have or you don't. So you can see here, even though our average age student is 10 to 14, here the average age student was 11.7 in this study. Our students were averaging pre-test at a 6.2-year level when they came in. But by the time they left, they were at an 8-point gain, or they had an 8-point gain, and they were at a 14.2-year level. So this is a very trainable skill. Now, if you're training an 11.7-year-old in this type of skill, they probably are not getting extra reading help at school anymore. They've gone beyond that. And so you also need a good reading program after you train the skill. And we offer that. We average about a 2 to 4 year gain in a 6-month period based on, different studies that we have in that word attack skill, which is important. But before you try to teach them to read, before you take them to a reading tutor, you have to look at these underlying skills that cause them to not be able to read in the first place. And it can be really easy among a parent that has 3 kids to see that, because you're able to compare pretty easily. So you can see, wow, this child has a lot of difficulty with reading, where, this other child had just breezed through that, but they have difficulty with this. So, if you see that and they've always had difficulty, it's probably due to an underlying cognitive deficiency. Okay, so now on top of reading, because reading is the act of attacking words, or being able to decode words. That's what reading is. But we don't want our kids just to attack words. We really want them to comprehend what they're reading. And the quicker the better. If they have to reread something 3 times to comprehend the meaning of what they read, that's not a good situation. That's probably not someone who enjoys reading a whole lot, or who wants to read for fun. So overall comprehension, before I would talk about any of these other skills that you see in front of me, would be reading fluency. So reading fluency is the number one skill needed for good comprehension. That would be before all of these. And then also before all of these skills here would be those cognitive skills. So if you're going to visualize well, you need good visual processing skills. If you're going to understand vocabulary, number one, you need world experience, which we cannot give a child in 3 to 6 months. But you need world experience. They need to be around those words. There was a very interesting study of moms that talked to their kids, and they looked at the degree of education that the mom had compared to how many words they spoke to their child every day. And of course, the higher the degree, they might speak thousands and thousands of more words to that child compared to maybe someone who never got a high school degree. So that the child that is spoken to thousands of words a day, which maybe they don't like at some point, but they probably have a much larger vocabulary to pull from than someone who just uses a few words a day. And we can't give them that, but we can give them maybe root words, prefixes, suffixes, understanding what a word is, the parts of a word, and that's vocabulary, and they're going to need good memory for vocabulary, good working memory. Reasoning skills. You think about, you're reading something, and now you have to use your critical thinking skills. And even for us older kids, older people, when we're reading something, I'm always taking my world experience and I'm taking skills of, do I believe that or not? What would you need to consider to believe that? So they have to reason. Sequential processing. If I'm spending all my time on reading the first sentence, but then by the third sentence I forget what the first sentence was, that's not good comprehension. And then I already talked about working memory skills. And then metacognitive strategies, that's really the critical thinking skills. So, for instance, we go to IKEA. Actually, IKEA doesn't have words. So you can't. Let's say you get instructions of how to put together, how to put something together, and maybe a recipe, like a cooking recipe, and you have to follow the instructions, and maybe it's a souffle, so it requires a little bit more knowledge, and it requires the right order of events to happen. And so if you don't have all those events in order and you can't think through all those things, then you're going to lose that comprehension. So again, all these skills play into whether or not someone is going to be successful in school. And actually, I said that about 70% of our students in ReadRx, about 70% of our students are struggling school-age students. 30% are outside of that. They might have brain injury. They could be a stroke victim, or they could have just struggled all their life, and now they're struggling to keep their job. They're struggling to remember things. Maybe they've gotten a little bit older, and dementia is starting to set in. All of these groups of people can be helped by this type of training. It's a lot like physical exercise. Let's say you want bigger arm muscles or you want stronger arms. You go to the gym, and a personal trainer takes you through the training, and they strengthen your arms for you. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter what your weight is or what condition you come in. They can strengthen your arms. And the truth is that brain training is the same way. This is just looking at some other skills that that need different auditory skills. So, if I'm going to play a card game, what skills do you need to be good at playing a card game? Driving a car, that's scary. I have an almost 13-year-old, so I'm dreading the day that he drives that car. But I'm hoping that he has the right skills, to keep the car not hitting other things. So let me just say that when you improve these skills, then learning becomes easier. Life becomes simpler. Kids have more choices. And that's what we do at LearningRx. So if someone's struggling, they go through our training, they struggle less. They struggle less than before. Not that all their struggles go away. I've learned that myself. I have Kip, and actually let me show you. This was Kip's test coming in to LearningRx. And you can see that he has some real highs. He's super good in auditory processing because I knew that I had to develop that when he was little. But some of these other skills were very low. And so he went through math training. Awesome. His math grade this year has been at a B average. That's awesome from last year. But he still needs some more training. And I think it's because in some ways, you can only take these skills up so much. We might average about a 20 percentile gain in some of these skills within about 90 hours of training, so he needs to come back. But in the meantime, what I learned was, as a 7th grader, he's learned some bad habits. He's learned how to be the below average student or the average student. And even if he has some of these skills, and when he sits down and he does his work well, he has to do his work, and he has to turn it in. So, there's 3 parts to learning. There's knowledge, right? So there's the instruction they get. There's the cognitive skills that they get, and then there's motivation. And I think what I learned is, as they get older, they start losing some of that motivation. And sometimes they get that back when you train these cognitive skills, and other times I think parents just need to try to remotivate. So I'm on a weekly Starbucks run with Kip. He has a good week with no missing assignments. And I know, some of you are into diets. Maybe that doesn't sound awesome, but it works for the family. So at any rate, you can see here what type of changes someone can get with brain training. And so, if you do have this struggling student and they are struggling in one of these areas, consider what a change in those skills might mean for them. And what's interesting is we work in all these areas. So when a student comes in, here they tested below average. At the end of, this is a 90-hour study, at the end of 90 hours, they tested above average. They were literally able to walk past 29 people, if that makes sense. But they didn't just get this one change. They got all these changes all at the same time. So these students literally went from below average to above average in 90 hours of training. And that takes them from a struggling student, someone who can't do the work, or someone who takes too long or makes too many errors, to someone that could do the work. You just have to get them to sit down and do it for some of us. But they can do the work. And when they do the work, they don't need my help anymore. They don't have questions on what it means. They get it. A very interesting thing. So if some of you have not come in for testing yet and you're considering testing, here's the top 3 reasons what I would suggest that you come in for testing. One thing is it eliminates the guesswork. Maybe you don't understand why they struggle, if it's an attitude, if it's that motivation piece. We have really good teachers in our district, but sometimes you think, man, did my child go to the restroom while they were talking about this? What happened here? So it eliminates that type of guesswork. You can see if it's really a cognitive issue or a knowledge issue. Some people come to us and they've already spent $20,000 on testing, and just to figure out the why, and it can eliminate a lot of that guessing. So you can see right away, not waste your money on finding out too much information, but finding out enough to help fix it. And then for us, the reason that we test is because we measure the improvement that we get with students. We're always trying to improve our training. And so we're always pre- and post-test so we can measure the type of changes that we get. In our training, probably about 6 to 8 weeks in the training is where parents and students both start seeing some real-life changes occur. So test results are just that. It's a 2 to 5 minute test, and it's just measuring them on one specific area. But real-life changes are what we're all after, honestly. And, when you see a child say to you, Mom, I can do this myself. I can do my homework myself. What a blessing, right? Or when they come home with that higher grade, or, they just write better. Their spelling is better. Their writing is better. You tell them to go upstairs and get you three things, and they actually come down with the 3 things. That's amazing. So those real-life changes, again, usually 6 to 8 weeks. So let me just open myself up to questions, and I don't know if, Lindsay, if you have those questions ready. Okay, and then for those of you that have been listening and have questions, feel free to go ahead and type in your question, and we'll answer them. Tanya, you want to unmute her? Unmute her, yes. I will unmute.
Okay. Hi, everybody. This is Lindsay. Okay, let's see. The first question we have is, let's see here. Someone is saying, I'm one of those that have spent thousands on testing, currently have a student on an IEP that is getting 7 hours of one-on-one help from special ed. What would our program here at LearningRx have to offer that student?
So I guess one of my questions would be is what are you getting out of that one-on-one help? Do you see growth, right? Because you're if there's tons of growth, what we all want is we want that one-on-one help to lead to a student that can be mainstreamed. And I don't know the full extent of the IEP or what the student's needs are. But any good special ed program, I would think, would lead to great improvement. And they might, but their focus a lot of times is on content, and it's not on developing these skills. So, teachers are there to teach. They're there to instruct, and they're there to try to get the child to remember facts and knowledge. The training that I know of within schools is not set up to develop skills like short-term memory or processing speed. So if you don't develop those skills, then they may always need that one-on-one instruction. So what I would say is that we're probably offering something very different. Not that they don't need, I think one-on-one training obviously is a great blessing. And those that homeschool, what a great blessing you give to your kids. I have my kids go to school, but again, there should be a great progression within their learning. And if there's not, then they need something else. Then it's not just a content issue; it's a cognitive issue. And special ed programs, schools are not set up to remediate cognitive issues like that. Oh. Okay. So, Lindsay, the phone cut off. But someone asked, how much is the first test? And so we'll test 7 major learning areas. The cost is $249, but for those of you that are on the webinar, we'll get $50 off. So it'd be $199 for you to take the test. It takes about an hour. It's not like overwhelming for the child. In fact, cognitive testing in some ways is fun for them, but it's an hour of time, and then you would come back and we'd give you a test report and go over those results, really to see if this would be a help to your child or if there's something else that your child should go to. Okay. Let me just answer maybe a couple more questions. If you guys have other questions, you can send them in, but a question is, can dyslexia be fixed? And I believe it can, especially, the last, I've been working with LearningRx for 19 years. Now my dad he's the founder of LearningRx. So I was the first non-doctor to open a center in 1995. Before that, only doctors ran centers. But dyslexia really means difficulty reading, and usually a diagnosis of dyslexia comes from someone having cognitive skills that there's a discrepancy between their skill and their reading level. And we have not found a student that we couldn't help develop those skills. Maybe one in Colorado Springs he needed more integration training first. But, 99% of the students that we see that have real reading difficulties can be helped through this type of training. And I believe that after the training, they would no longer qualify for that diagnosis. And then, let me see here. Why does my child do his homework and then forget to turn it in? Well, I would love the answer to that question as well. But again, I think it's partly this attention. So, if someone has ADHD, it may not be that they have attention deficit. Some of these other skills could lead to, poor attention skills. Like if they have a short-term memory issue, that might show itself as an attention issue. That's why it's important to get tested. I think it's a group of these skills along with maybe poor habits if they're older. So once you develop these skills, the likelihood of them turning in their homework goes up a whole lot, but not every day. Well, thank you so much for participating in the webinar. And again, we have this recorded so that if you want to give it to a family member, you're able to do that. And if you have any other questions, please email us, and we'll get you some answers. So have a great day today. It was nice joining you all.